there are certain skills that leaders need to learn, both soft skills, emotional intelligence skills, but also hard skills, like how to lead a team, like literally how to lead a team, how to manage conflict, how to communicate so that you're heard. All of these things that are crucial in running an organization. And then, of course, I do a lot of, business consulting, how to write a business plan and how to manage and different areas of a business. There's so much to do with leadership, and then when to step back and when to delegate, and when to grow. So all these things, there's a lot to learn being a leader. And if people really want to do it right, they need to study and read and listen to podcasts like yours, because that's going to add to their ability to lead.
Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Leadership, leadership, leadership. There just seems to be a lack of that globally at all levels, organizations, certainly politically. And so today's guest, Dr. Lori Baker-Schena, is talking about leadership and some of the components around leadership and what's missing around leadership. And then we also spend a little bit of time with her personal story, which, imagine being a 12-year-old and losing your mother to cancer and not actually even knowing even the day before that she passed away, that's how sick she was, because people had sort of held that back from her. That being said, my encouragement is for you is the only person you could be responsible for is yourself. All of us want to change other people around us. I know that. I'm guilty of it as well as others. However, the only person that you can control is yourself. And so my encouragement in that space is that if you already haven't taken one of our online courses, then to consider that, to get into it. And it's an honor as more and more people are taking our online courses. They're saying, Ken, this was transformational. This was amazing. This was something that will change my life forever. Now, we are mentioning the Quest for Purpose course in this podcast, which is really my life's work, and it's there to give you clarity in a journey. But there's many other courses are there. Why aren't you more like me? What do you really value? Dying to live, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, could be 2 years after we posted it. But we have many online courses at crgleader.com. Go to the online courses in the CRG Academy and engage in one of those and transform your life. Now, as always, thank you for being a Secrets of Success listener. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on. Leave a positive comment on whatever platform you are on. And also give us feedback. If you like an episode, let us know. The mystery of a podcast is you never know who's listening, where, or what. And so we always love to hear from our listeners if you have a moment just to share with us. So again, thank you for listening. And here's our guest, Dr. Lori Baker-Schena. Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, we think about the world today, and what is one of the things that's really, maybe missing? And I would suggest, this is my bias, is that it might be leadership. Well, we can backfill that today with our guest, Dr. Lori Baker-Schena. Did I say that right?
Beautiful job. Beautiful job,
Yeah,
Dr.
man,
Ken.
not bad for a dyslexic guy. So Lori, thanks for being on the show with us. Much appreciated. And since you've listened to some of the shows in Secrets of Success podcast, listeners have come to expect we need to hear your story. So you come from us from California at the moment, but let's go backwards in time, back to the future, and just look about where did you grow up? What was sort of like your family life when growing up like?
Ken, what a great question. And thank you for having me on your amazing show. I want to say hello to your audience. They're very lucky to have you as a host.
Well, thank you. Thank
really,
you, everybody. I said to Lori, free book if she says something like that for me. But anyway.
No, but seriously, we have to take I'm a big one as a leader to pause and reflect. And it's also important for podcast hosts who really are doing such a service. And I know that your audiences appreciate you very much. Ken, have you ever seen the movie Dazed and Confused?
I don't recall.
Okay, well, maybe your listeners have, but it took place in 1976 when things were crazy. That's the year I graduated high school. And so I always laugh at that because I grew up in the 70s, which of course dates me. I'm very transparent. I'm 62, but I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in the 1970s. So I'm a Valley girl. And I haven't really gone far. I still live in the general area, but I grew up in a very interesting family. I had two older siblings who were disabled, and I was born, and I had to kind of carry the family crown, so to speak. So that's a whole other discussion about what it is as a caretaker and the expectations on a child who arrives in the world with expectations. So when I was 12, my mom died of cancer, and my father was such an incredible man, and he really raised my sister and my brother, my older sister and brother, and myself. And so that was one of the most profound moments of my life, is to lose someone that young. I ended up going to college, and I wanted to be a news.
Just take a breath there, Lori.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And the reason being is, of course, interesting enough, I have an amazing daughter-in-law that my son married, and her mom passed away when she was 13. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we just know how, like you say, a significant event this is. Just take us through, since you're a leadership coach now and you help people through sort of life's journeys, what can you teach the audience about this event for you?
Well, it was very interesting because, first of all, back in 1970, no one talked about cancer. So when my mother got it in 1968, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and no one said anything to me. I knew she was kind of sick, but I didn't know what was going on. And in her final days, when she was in the hospital, my father came, and I went to see her and hugged her, and my father said, well, say goodbye. And so I said goodbye. And then a day later, he comes to me and he says that she's gone, she's dead. And I had no idea she was that sick. And so I went through a lot of therapy in terms of closure because I never had a chance to say goodbye to my mom. And I think that all of us who are, Ken, this really hit home with me with COVID because so many people died in the hospital alone and they couldn't say goodbye to their loved ones. And I actually know some people too who did that. And that sense, and when people die in accidents and tragically, and there's no chance to say goodbye, it is very, very difficult for the people who are left behind. And that's something I just I finally came to grips with. It's been 51 years, but you come to grips with as a young person and as an older person because that closure is so important. So that's a profound loss, and what I did with that loss was I learned how to grieve, and then when people lost their loved ones and went through it, I was able to really help them cope with that grief. And I still do that to this day. When someone dies, I call up and I go right into it. How are you doing? And what can I do? And I don't tiptoe around it because it's real for me. And so I have to say, to fast forward, my sister and brother have also passed. They passed of cancer. My sister had breast cancer, and my brother had liver cancer. So in their 50s, and so coping with that and going through that was, and then my father's death. So I've had a lot of loss, but I've turned that loss into something that I can help others cope with. So that's kind of what shaped me. No one really talks about this. It's great talking about it, Ken, but that's what shaped me as a leader and as a coach, is that empathy of loss and how you deal with it and go on despite the pain and despite the grief.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've all have stories. My girlfriend was this is your show, not mine, but My girlfriend was murdered when I was 21.
Oh,
She was 19, or was she 20 and I was 22? I just forget at the moment. But I get that understanding where you don't get to say goodbye. You've got this gap where I have unfinished business. So
yes.
thanks for being open and sharing that story with us. Now, you alluded to your dad. He was amazing, and he really helped you, the three of you, sort of transition from that. What was it that he was doing that was so valuable to you?
First of all, Ken, I am so sorry. I mean, that took my breath away when you said that, because you were so young.
Well, it was 1982, so not that much different than when you were going through it with your mom. And so many, many years ago now, and process that. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's just tough. My father was an amazing man. He was born in 1919, and he was a World War II vet, and he was one of the most positive people I know. And he was also one who could hold a conversation with anyone, and he had a great sense of humor. And he just was who really put confidence into me. I was bullied as a child, and that's what part of my story. I had, buck teeth and glasses, and the kids were so mean they even made a song about me and would sing it, in elementary school. But I would go home, and my dad would be just so positive about what I could do and the things that I could contribute to the world. And he never, which is not always good, but he never really let me be sad. He always, said, let's stay positive. There's so much more out there. And I think that ability really got me through those tough years as being bullied and the tough years of losing my mom, and really allowed me to have the confidence to finally, to live a life with passion and purpose, and doing the things that I really want to do, and fearless, Ken, because one of the things I talk about in my leadership coaching is being fearless. And so all those things, he helped me. He was really a role model, and he was tremendous. I was very close to my father.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Now, after high school, you went off to university, and where did you go, and what did you take, and why did you take it?
Well, those were the days of Watergate, and I really wanted to be a investigational journalist. So I ended up becoming a journalism major in college, and I thought I was going to, be the big, and in college I did a lot of wonderful investigative work, and I busted some people heads, I got things going there. It was really fun. But then I got into the real world of newspapers, and at 6 months after I was in there, I realized this is just not for me, because the freedom you have as a college student is not the freedom you have on a newspaper in the real world. And of course, newspapers are business. So there was a lot of things that I couldn't report about, and there were a lot of things that just didn't work for me. So I decided to do a pivot in my life and go into public relations. But I always tell people that whatever, especially young people, whatever you do in school and a university, you don't necessarily have to do that as a career. And as a matter of fact, you can think about things you can do throughout your life, because if you're lucky, you'll live a long life, and you can have several careers. And that's exactly what happened to me, because I was a journalist for 2 years, but I've been in public relations and marketing for forever, and I never took one class in those two subjects in college. So I just pivoted into healthcare marketing and public relations. And I started my business when I was 29, and it's still going just a little bit. I have one client left, but I've pivoted quite a bit since then. But that's what I did. I just decided journalism wasn't for me, but I love to write, and so that's what I ended up doing.
Well, communicating is communicating, isn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely. So with that, you went into the corporate world, but then you left around age 29. What drove that decision, and where did you get the courage to do it?
Ken, I'll tell you, I realized that I could not be micromanaged, and I did not flourish with bosses. I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't. The politics I wasn't prepared for in the corporate world, and which is important to note. And also, I just didn't like to be heavily supervised, because I was a very hard worker, and I worked hard, and I was self-motivated. So and on top of that, I was getting married, and so there's that. I was miserable in my job, and then my fiance had two little girls who needed a mom. He had full custody of them, and they were 6 and 7 at the time. So I thought, what can I do that I can watch these girls and really be able to work hard and not have to answer to anybody? So I took the plunge. This was back in 1987, which was a recession then, and worked hard the year before, got an MBA, and worked hard, got clients, and then I decided to start my own business. And I always tell people that when I did that, I left a very big organization, and people said to me, to my face, that I'm going to fail. You're never going to be able to make a living doing this by yourself. And I thought to myself, well, what's the worst that could happen if I fail? Will I starve? No. Will I get a disease? No. Will I, be horribly miserable? Not necessarily. And worst comes to worst, I'll just get another job. So I took the plunge, and a year later, I had doubled my salary and had never looked back. But there's so many learning lessons about not listening to the haters and having faith in yourself and preparing for a move like that. All these things have really made me who I am. But that was a big move when I was 29.
Well, you think about it, Lori, and congratulations on having the courage to kind of step out in spite of what everybody was saying. Of course, now, with social media, you have public haters versus the ones that are inside the walls.
Yes.
So, interesting question, as two people who work in the area of OD and leadership and organizational development and psychology. What do you think drives people to say that to you? In other words, so what's the benefit of this? Oh, well, you're never going to make it, Lori. So what do you think is the underlying dysfunction with them that's causing them to even say that to you or to others that are listening to this show?
Right. Well, I think that people project, and I'm not a psychologist, but I know that people project their fears. I'm a cancer survivor myself, Ken, and I remember when I got cancer. This was about 8 years ago, and it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And, a lot of people were real sympathetic to it, like, I'm really sorry. But a lot of people wanted to know the details because they were afraid that it might happen to them. Like, it wasn't like, what's going on with you, but what is it? What maybe it'll happen to me. I don't know if that makes sense. But the way people approach other people is from their perspective, and they might have a lot of damage in their past, a lot of fears in their past, and instead of learning how to be an encourager as a child and a supporter, they never learn those skills. So you combine the lack of ability to be an encourager combined with fears that people are projecting, and you're going to get these type of haters. Because in my DNA, if someone's going to try something, not only am I not going to bash it, but I'm going to say to you, what can I do to help? But that's not in everybody's toolkit. Not everybody can do that. So I think it truly, when people come at you like that, and what they're thinking is that you really have to, I always say, consider the source. Some people just can't be happy for you. It's just not they just don't have those skills. So that's why we really need to be internally focused.
There's a statement I've used on this show about 100 times, and it said, everybody has an opinion, very few people have wisdom.
Exactly.
And of course, the last person you want to listen to is somebody who says, well, Lori, your business isn't going to succeed, and they've never had a business of their own. I said, well, hang on. Where's this coming from? So in spite of that, you stepped out. Now, you said you doubled your income in the first 12 months. Now, so what was driving that immediate success for you? In other words, I know working hard is fine, but there's many people who have worked hard and still not had that level of success so quickly. So what was sort of an anchor point? What do you think were some of the characteristics, qualities, strategies that caused you to be so successful so quickly?
I'll tell you, it was charging hourly and charging. So I would put in, let's say, 60 hours of work in my quote-unquote real job and have a salary and get what I got. But when I put 60 hours into my new job, I was getting paid 60 hours worth of work. And that paid off. Does that make sense?
So you instead of being a social enterprise on behalf of the other corporation, you actually got paid the hours that you were putting in.
Exactly. And, I probably could have made more, but I probably didn't, I did a lot of, introductory work because I was just starting out. But if everyone in the audience, if you think about it, if you really work 60 hours a week and you charge those 60 hours a week, you're going to be making the money. That's going to double your salary. I mean, it just is. It's just unless you're making ginormous amounts of money. But as a person who was in the field for about, 5 years, I wasn't making an enormous amount of money. I was making a livable income, but I was working so hard anyway, Ken, and not getting any A, recognition, which was really important for me, and B, the money. So by having these great clients and working super hard and charging for my time, I was able to double my salary. It was amazing.
Cool. So you were in the space of marketing for many, many years, but now you're into leadership. Talk to us about the transition and when that occurred and what was driving that.
Well, one of my favorite parts of my life is I was a professor, a full professor, part-time for many years, and then a full professor. And when I was about 31, I got a call from my department chair saying that they needed an emergency hire to teach news writing, which I thought, everybody, I don't know if your listeners know this, but there's no people who teach at the university level, at least in the United States, you don't need a teaching credential. You just need a higher degree. So no one's ever trained how to be a teacher as a professor. You just learn around the way.
We've all been in those classes, Laura.
Yes.
It's obvious they don't know how to teach.
Yes, and that's why, Ken. I mean, I think it's a crime. But anyway.
Absolutely.
So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. I'm one to just, what's the worst that can happen? I can fail. The kids will hate me, and I'll just never do that again. And I was so nervous the first day. I was shaking, taking the role. I'll never forget that. But I absolutely loved it. And so I ended up teaching for about 15, 17 years part-time while I was doing my marketing business. And then I decided that I was very interested in leadership. So I went later in life when I was about 48 and I got my doctorate in organizational leadership. At the same time, I went full-time as a professor because I thought, you know what? I'm really enjoying this. So I worked full-time, and so a total of 25 years. And in my classroom, I taught marketing, but I also taught motivation. I mean, I was a motivational speaker for these kids because they never really, I taught at Cal State Northridge, and no one ever encourages students to do what they want to do and to be what they want to be. And so we did all this self-confidence stuff. And my students have gone on to incredible professions. And so I did that, and I realized I really liked this motivational speaking thing. So then, of course, the cancer I just talked about, he was hit by cancer, and I realized, and this cancer will come back, and so it hasn't yet, but it will. And so I realized, life's short, and I really want to get this message out to more people. I really want to speak on a bigger stage, and I really want to help leaders up their game. So I quit. I left a full-time tenured position at a university, and I started my company as a speaker. And then another company, especially for women, called Leadership Consortium, which helps women leaders. And I've done that for 8 years, and here I am. I'm just enjoying the journey and helping people be better leaders, because nobody teaches people how to lead. You might have some natural leaders, but most of us out there have never had a leadership class where you learn how to lead.
And it is one of the expertise that we have here, so I get that. I understand that. Interesting, my wife worked at a university, academic coach, and the number one place that lacked leadership was the university.
There's no question.
The administration there was it was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It's
dysfunctional.
funny. So we have all these educators who are trying to lead or whatever, and just in the end, actually, one of the reasons she left was this leadership was so bad. People in their 50s and 60s were in tears just over how they were being treated. That's just how pathetic it was. So what have you learned? So now that you're on this journey, and congratulations on making the shift and just sort of upping your game independently here, what have you learned about leadership that would be helpful for the audience today?
I think, first of all, we have to realize that we need to learn how to lead. And the reason why I say that is because everybody knows someone who got promoted because they did really well at their job. So you do well at your job and then you get promoted, but you're never taught the skills that and you know this, Ken, this is your business, but you're not taught the skills. So all of a sudden you're supervising people and you're sucking at it because you don't know what the heck you're doing. So I believe that there are certain skills that leaders need to learn, both soft skills, emotional intelligence skills, but also hard skills, like how to lead a team, like literally how to lead a team, how to manage conflict, how to communicate so that you're heard. All of these things that are crucial in running an organization. And then, of course, I do a lot of, business consulting, how to write a business plan and how to manage and different areas of a business. There's so much to do with leadership, and then when to step back and when to delegate, and when to grow. So all these things, there's a lot to learn being a leader. And if people really want to do it right, they need to study and read and listen to podcasts like yours, because that's going to add to their ability to lead.
So take us through some of these skills that you were mentioning, which is, links to the work that we're doing as well. But I love a colleague who's, playing around in this space. What are some of the things that you are coaching or teaching or speaking about for these people specifically in terms of skill development?
One of them is how to lead a team and how to help a team be functional and work together. So I teach leaders how to set norms and help team members set norms so people know what's expected in the teamwork, and also how to motivate teams so that they're just not meeting every week and they're like robots, but there's passion, there's buy-in.
Let's just drill into that one for a moment, Lori, and just say, okay, I'm a company owner, I've got a team that I'm having to lead and they're not motivated. You take me through some of the things you would teach me on that.
Well, the first thing I would do, and what I do in companies, is I find out I take a personal audit. If it's a small enough company, even if it's a larger company, I'll take an audit on what the perception is of the team in terms of if their needs are getting met, with if they feel A, they're appreciated, B, they know what they're doing, C, they feel they're compensated, D, what the dysfunctions are of the company. So it's really important for me to get the landscape of what the company needs. Then I look at the culture, take a deep dive with the culture, and if the leader is working towards a culture of excellence, or what they're thinking and what their needs are. So it takes a real big audit of a company before you can start going in there and making suggestions. But once you do that, it's really important that you be sure that your employees, first thing is to communicate and that they understand why they're working where they're working, the contributions they're making both to society and to the company, and see their value. These are the things that we focus on first, because that employee appreciation component is crucial to get the buy-in so that the leader can lead them where they need to lead.
I want to delve in just a little bit for the audience purposes. I'm playing with you a little bit here, Lori, where I've had the fortunate opportunity to hang out with Marshall Goldsmith on an invite-only event in New York as one of the top leadership coaches in the world. And of course, he has the stakeholder feedback. I'm curious to hear from you about what a leader thinks is going on and what the audit reveals in how that has gone and in some of the misperceptions or how the audit process, what they discovered that the leader didn't see coming.
Oh, it happens. You wouldn't believe, especially when you say that everything's confidential and you have this. But the leaders, they don't understand what they don't understand. They have no clue that their employees are feeling underappreciated, and that they have a lack of direction. I think I don't quite know why this is so widespread. So maybe you can tell me that, Dr. Ken, but they just have no idea how, they're just not happy. The employees aren't happy, but they're also directionless. And third, that the employees don't understand why they're working for this company. And so the disconnect is the CEO and the C-suite thinks they're communicating their values, and they're not. So they're not holding regular meetings, they're not touching base with their employees, they're not understanding their customers' needs. I think the biggest thing is the lack of communication and the lack of mindfulness and self-awareness of these executives, which is why when they come and ask me to, for an audit, that's a great big step. But you'll find, and I know you know this too, Dr. Ken, that some leaders, quote unquote leaders, won't even do this because they have no self-awareness that there's anything wrong. So that's like the first step, right? But I think that it's that lack of communication within a company and the lack of awareness.
Are you familiar with Dr. Tasha's book, Insights?
Cash's or Cashman?
Dr. Tasha Urich.
Oh, no.
Okay, so out of Denver, I'm just going to recommend it. I think the listeners know that I quote her constantly because she's been on my show a couple of years ago. But she wrote the book Insights, and this will be interesting for your own research with and work with your clients, is they said, what percentage of people believe that they know themselves, and my perception of self and opinion of self is equal to how you experience me? And so 95% of people said that, yeah, I know myself, I'm mindful, I'm emotionally intelligent, yada, yada, yada. Then she had her students go out and do research and interview the people around you, Lori, and say, okay, what percentage of people agreed with the other person's self-awareness and their perception of self? What do you think that number was?
I'm sure it was hugely different, maybe like 15, 25?
10%.
10, oh my word.
Yeah, so 85% of people are delusional. So that's why, and that's of course why Marshall Goldsmith's stakeholder feedback works so well, and that's really an audit format too. We have a Leadership 360 assessment tool.
Right.
Is to be vulnerable enough to say what is really, really going on. And I don't know, do you ever find that sometimes leaders get defensive when they get this feedback that says, oh, by the way, there's huge gaps here?
I'm really good at presenting it.
But they could, right?
They definitely could be defensive. But, I have a way, I have to say, I have a way of helping people get beyond their defenses and understand that the news I'm giving them is only going to enhance them. So it's truly, I think, one of my gifts is that, did you ever hear of nonviolent communication? Have you, NVC?
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I kind of blanking on the guy's name. It's Rosen something, and it's just nonviolent communication. You can look it up, but he's passed now, but it is just about how to get your needs met without getting people's defenses up, and it's a great skill that I teach and that I love. But working with executives, it's crucial that you gain their trust and letting them know that what comes up in these counseling and coaching sessions are going to really help them, and it's not a reflection on like a direct reflection. It's more of a insight. So that's one of my favorite things to do, is to break bad news. Because I think I'm really good at it, and I love watching the light bulbs go on when people finally let that go. Pardon?
This is the communications major and professor at work.
Yeah.
So that's you doing it. Well, it's interesting. The other thing that I, for the audience members, and I think this is important, is the audit actually doesn't create the results. It only reveals what is already true.
Exactly.
And so, if you go to your doctor and say, oh, by the way, your blood pressure is high, yeah, sometimes blood pressure can go up because you're nervous about it. However, it didn't make it. terrible because you went to the doctor. It was that way before you arrived. So that's part of the audit process, is being in denial doesn't mean that I'm okay with that. So take us through, what are some of the other things that you do to really help? And I want to apply this to the general audience too, because there's some people who maybe don't, lead a team specifically, but they always lead themselves, or they lead a family or a volunteer group. What are some of the other things that you are coaching your leaders to do better and to really go to the next level?
I think one of the key things that I really like, and again, it's interesting, I'm kind of revealing myself, I'm a real communications person. But, and by the way, before I tell you that, I just wanted to say that whenever I asked to lead retreats or asked to do big keynotes for companies, I won't do it unless I can talk to the employees, because I just need to get a feel for a diagnosis of what's going on. So I'm a real, I tailor things, and that's so true, because nothing is the same for everybody, right? So that just, anyway, one of the most important things leaders can do, and everybody in the audience can do, is be an active listener. And when I ask audiences, how many of you are active listeners, I get, hundreds of people in the audience, I get maybe 2 hands, because we have lost the art. We are so distracted in this world that we really aren't listening actively, where you really are with that person. And as leaders, we have a lot on our plate. But when you are with someone in your office, or you're with a group of people, you need to be there and be present and listen. And when you do that, you signal that you appreciate them, and that you're listening to them, and that you value them. And so I really make it a point to teach active listening and what that looks like. And I even say that into the personal space, Ken, when people are going out and working and they come back at the end of the day, and your significant other says, "How was your day?" And they're busy doing something, and they're really not caring how your day was. I mean, they're saying it. But to go home one night and ask your spouse, "How was your day?" and sit down and let them talk to you for 10 or 15 minutes uninterrupted while they tell you, without kids, without the phones, without cooking, just being there. And the impact of that alone on a relationship, on anything, is just extraordinary. It's very dramatic. So I always tell my leaders that you need to stop and listen, and do not be distracted when people are talking to you.
Well, we grew up in a time when there wasn't phones. And it's so important what Lori is saying, and what you just said, Lori, around putting those devices away when you're having a conversation. There was some research that even if I have it on the table face down, it makes a statement, a subliminal statement to the other person, that this phone could be a priority over you in a moment. So if you can, which most of us can, get the thing away from the table. If you can put it inside your pocket, fine, so that it's not a visual sort of cue hanging out there. And hey, I'm guilty of it too. It's so easy to be addicted to your device and not be an active listener. Now, when we think, we only have about a few minutes left, if you can believe it already. You're just scooting through this fairly quickly. So we're not going to be cutting off yet. But first of all, before I do it, for people to find out more about your work, or getting you as a speaker, or as a leadership coach or an audit or whatever, how can they find out more about you, Lori?
You can find me, the best way is my website, which is www.loribakerschena.com, and you can send me a message, and we can chat, and I'd love to meet your audience. That would be absolutely lovely.
Now, spell out your website so that those of us because Lori could be spelled different ways.
Sure. Okay, it's Lori, LoriBakerschena.
Awesome. And then we'll have that in the show notes if people need to find out more about it. Any other ways that they can get a hold of you?
You find me on LinkedIn. It's funny, I'm on Clubhouse now, which is, I don't know if you've done that yet, Ken, but it's just a kick. And I'm on Clubhouse. You can find me there. And also Twitter, my handle is Dr. BS, DOCTOR BS, which comes from Dr. Baker-Schena, and my students used to make that down to Dr. BS, so that kind of became a moniker of mine.
Yeah,
and people remember it.
An acronym that really... Okay.
Yeah, but it's fun because people remember you. And when I was traveling a lot, planes and meeting people, I would just say, you can find me here, and it's easy to find me. You can even find. I have a website too. It's so fun. So that's what I do. But that's my Twitter handle too.
Cool. Well, I like it. That's fun. Now we just have a few minutes left. So when we think about wrapping up in words of wisdom for people from a personal and or organizational leadership point of view and strategies beyond what you've already shared, what would be some things that me as the listener could consider, think about, or implement as soon as I turn off this podcast?
I think it's really important that you take an internal audit of your key values and be sure that your actions and what you do and how you show up in the world aligns with those values. And so when you have a passion and a purpose, and if you bring that to your company or to the way you live, and I call that a personal leadership brand, when you bring that to the table, people know what to expect from you, and you really can show up how you want to show up. So I guess as a leader, you want to really, really do a deep dive into yourself and figure out, how do I want to show up so that people know me and people can rely on me and people can count on me for being that person?
Great. Thank you for that. And I'm going to give you one more minute to say, what would you like to say as a closing remarks to the Secrets of Success audience today?
Well, I also want to say real quick, if we do ever get back into the world, remember body language. I think we're going to forget completely about the importance of body language as leaders, but when someone walks into your office, turn away from your computer and look them straight in the eye. And don't forget, I think someday we will be shaking hands again. A firm handshake is still good. So I spoke so much pre-pandemic about body language, and there's Zoom body language. But when we get back into the real world, remember how important eye contact is, how listening is, how you show up. Just don't forget your total being, not just what you're saying, but how you're looking and how you're just interacting in the world.
Thank you for that. And of course, podcasts live on forever. So this is, when somebody's listening to this, I'm just going with it. And for sure. And, human beings are meant to connect physically. So that's something that we want to continue to endorse or encourage. So thank you, Lori, for hanging out with us, Dr. Lori. And again, your website is LORBAKERSCHENA.com. Well, let me just go this way. And again, Lori, thanks for being with us.
So my pleasure. Really my pleasure.
So Lori's with us, and I want you to think about your leadership. How is it that you can pay attention better? Give the focus to that other individual that's in the room. Are you really, really listening? Hey, I'm guilty of not doing it. What about the ability to be appreciative of the people around you, personally and professionally, and taking what Lori has said and applying it to think about somebody, even as soon as you turn this podcast off, of you just reaching out, maybe even just a thank you text or appreciation text of some sort or another. Now, as always, thank you for being a Secrets of Success listener. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on, leave a positive comment on whatever platform you're listening on. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis.
Thanks for exploring the secrets of success with us. If you want to keep the momentum going, log on to crgleader.com. Scroll to the bottom and sign up for our inspirational emails. You can also take your success to the next level by following us on Facebook and Twitter and connecting with Ken on LinkedIn. We hope you have a great week and look forward to you joining us next time for the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Ken Keis.